Oceanography News.
Some set sail to conquer, some set sail to discover, some set sail with an army of angry crusaders. We set sail on a ship of fools, we smile into the weather.
Knowledge of the oceans is more than a matter of curiosity. Our very survival may hinge upon it.
Our maps are filled with pictures of strange sea creatures.
Welcome to Ocean News 22, and this strange sea creature we're starting off with is the Kraken Robotics Katfish. Kraken Robotics has successfully demonstrated its Katfish unmanned surface vessel launch and recovery system from the TKMS Atlas UK's 11-meter Arkhams USV, currently in service with the UK Royal Navy. The demonstration showed how Katfish and our USV LARS work together to enable autonomous, high-resolution seabed intelligence from smaller naval platforms, supporting navies as they advance toward more flexible and unmanned solutions. With its ability to safely and autonomously launch and recover catfish from USVs, our USV-LARS allows small naval platforms to collect catfish's high-resolution synthetic aperture sonar data, significantly increasing their capabilities and acting as force multipliers, said Greg Reed, President and CEO of Kraken Robotics. You can read the full announcement in the show notes. Pictured here in Figure 1 is Kraken's Katfish and USV-LARS system integrated on the TKMS Atlas UK's Arkham's 11-meter USV. In this image you can see the Kraken's Katfish being deployed by the USV-LARS system. In this image you get an example of the Kraken's Katfish captured SAS imagery of the Fragner, a Norwegian steamship shipwreck. And this is an image of the Atlas UK Arkham's 11 USV at port and the Katfish USV launch and recovery system. Following is a video released by Kraken of this new USV system. It's quite impressive to watch. This ties nicely into our next story, which is 3 Questions with Carl Hartsfield. The story has been published by Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. Captain Hartsfield, USN retired, discusses the role ocean science plays in our national defense. Question: with so many discoveries emerging from the oceanographic research we do, how do we determine which findings may have implications for national security? Answer: anytime you discover a new phenomenon in the ocean, whether it be some type of duct or temperature gradient, it can have national security implications. We know this from Huey's rich history of converting knowledge about the ocean into military advantage. A prime historical example of this relates to something called the afternoon effect, a phrase used to describe the difficulty of detecting submarines during calm, sunny days. Back in the early 1930s, no one understood what caused this, so researchers at Huey began looking into it, and through a mix of science, acoustics, and instruments like the bathothermograph, were able to solve the mystery. They determined the warm surface water in the afternoon can cause sound ducting, whereby the ocean layers in density and bends sound waves downward. This traps sound within the layer and prevents it from traveling deeper. Fast forward to now, and submarines routinely use layers, sound ducts, eddies, and ocean currents, ice melting, and other ocean phenomena to amplify detections and hide on the other sides of barriers. We call it tactical oceanography in the submarine force today. Science, technology, and the military all invested their genius to better understand the ocean and use that knowledge to strengthen our national defense. Question. Open science emphasizes transparency and sharing discoveries, which at times must conflict with the secrecy required for national security. How does WHOI balance these competing priorities? Answer. First, you have to be master of the information and understand when you can share information and when you can't. That requires a deal of experience. Over decades of working with the military, WHOI has been able to effectively distinguish between the scientific realm and the national defense realm and toggle between the two. We know that a lot of the basic science we do can be readily shared among the public, but when some of these non-tactical discoveries we make in the ocean have tactical applications, things tend to get classified quickly. In general, it's always a very delicate balance when it comes to scientific discovery and national security. We need our folks to know where the lines are drawn. Question. What do you see as the biggest growth area for WHOI in national defense? Captain Hartsfield answers, one of the big areas the Navy wants to invest in is equipping submarines and other crewed military assets with uncrewed vehicles like REMUS AUVs. Here at WHOI, we do this every day with the Armstrong, the Atlantis, and other research ships. We mix these crewed vessels with ocean robots and other uncrewed vessels, which significantly expands the scope of what we can explore, measure, and observe in the ocean. It extends our reach. Well, the same concept applies to submarines. The Navy wants these very expensive assets, which can cost $3 billion or more, to have more capability and increase the scope of what they can do. They want to increase the return on their capital investments. Toward this end, our engineering team at WHOI figured out a way to turn a submarine torpedo tube into a launching and docking port for REMUS vehicles. Our first demonstration of this capability was with the Yellow Marais REMUS 600, which can autonomously launch out of the tube, go away from the submarine to perform a task, then return and autonomously dock itself back into the tube almost like magic. The AI-enhanced software to dock took nearly 250,000 lines of code. The problem we've solved with the Yellow Marais project is a really hard one. The Navy tried to do it for many years. In achieving this, WHOI has been able to add capability to submarines that multiply the force, building more value per dollar per unit. These uncrewed vehicles can also lower the risk to humans since each can autonomously handle tasks that would otherwise put crew in danger. By design, our efforts significantly reduce the number of crew members on board needed to manage these REMUS AUVs during missions. More capability, less risk, and less burden on the crew. It has been a real game changer for the Navy. And this was written by author Evan Lubofsky. And this previous story nicely ties into our next story. Chinese expedition reveals unexplored section of mysterious Arctic Ocean ridge. Oceanographers hope to find otherworldly ecosystems at hydrothermal vents on the Arctic sea floor. Here's an image of the submersible Fenduzhe being deployed off a Chinese icebreaker in the Arctic Ocean. Chinese scientists have become the first to visit one of Earth's most remote and geologically intriguing realms, an underwater volcanic ridge in the Arctic Ocean. The expedition, which concluded late last month, explored the eastern part of the Gakkel Ridge, part of the global system of submerged mountain chains that play a key part in plate tectonics. A team of scientists took a submersible vessel beneath the Arctic sea ice and completed more than 40 dives, going as deep as 5,277 meters. The analysis are far from complete, but this section of the Gakkel Ridge might have hot water vents that spew from the sea floor. Similar vents on the western and better explored part of the ridge are home to bizarre ecosystems that thrive far from the reach of sunlight. They provide scientists with some of the best opportunities to understand how life might arise and evolve in icy oceans on worlds beyond Earth, such as on Jupiter's ice-encrusted moon, Europa. Expedition scientists will spend the next few years studying the rocks, water, and animals that they gathered during the submersible dives. Quote, "It's the last piece of the puzzle," unquote, to understand this unique Arctic environment, says Xiaozia Hong, a marine geophysicist at the Institute of Deep Science and Engineering in Sanya, China, and the expedition's chief scientist. The Gakkel Ridge stretches from off the coast of Greenland to Siberia. Volcanic eruptions along it create new seafloor crust, which spreads away from the ridge at some of the slowest rates on the planet, slower than the rate at which fingernails grow. Yet somehow that sluggish geology manages to produce enough heat and chemical energy to sustain hydrothermal vents on the sea floor. In 2001, a U.S.-German expedition discovered hydrothermal vents on the western part of the Gakkel Ridge. Researchers have returned multiple times to that area to study the rich chemistry and biology of the deep, dark vent system. But the eastern side of the ridge is more remote and challenging to explore. Russian scientists have conducted some surveys, but the latest Chinese expedition is the first intensive geological survey and diving expedition in the area, Huang says. "It's so hard to get there that anything anybody does is almost guaranteed to be exciting and different and new," says Christopher German, a marine geochemist at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution in Massachusetts. The Chinese expedition is poised to yield significant new insights, as Elmer Albers, a marine geoscientist at the Alfred Wegener Institute in Bremerhaven, Germany. The Chinese expedition, organized by the Ministry of Natural Resources and the Chinese Academy of Sciences, paired a deep-sea crewed submersible named Fenduzhe with an icebreaker. It was the first time Fenduzhe, which has explored many parts of the oceans, including the Mariana Trench, has visited the Arctic region. Other expeditions have used remotely operated vehicles to explore the Gakkel Ridge because of the dangers of the vehicle becoming trapped under the floating sea ice. Fenduzhe carried 3 people on board, usually 2 pilots and 1 scientist, and entered the ocean from the ship through a temporary clearing in the sea ice, Huang says. After descending and studying the seafloor, the submersible ascended and then paused 150 to 200 meters below the sea surface and used a camera and multi-beam sonar system to detect an opening in the ice above. At times, when an opening did not appear, the icebreaker created one by clearing some of the floating ice. "To be honest, I was never afraid," Huang says. "It's really a privilege to have such an opportunity to explore the seafloor in person," she says. The dive sites were chosen to target geologically interesting areas, which included seamounts and cliffs. The researchers also studied fish and other marine creatures. Huang says it is really fascinating how those animals survive, both in the crushing pressure of the deep ocean and at shallower depths, in a realm that still remains dark for half of the year because of the extreme Arctic seasons. Huang declined to provide details on possible hydrothermal vent discoveries, saying the data are still being analyzed. Our next story is a throwback to a time before GPS navigation, when finding your way at sea required skill, precision, and a clear view of the stars. At a Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, seen here in 1961, Captain Emerson Hiller uses a sextant to measure the angle between the horizon and a celestial body, a timeless tool for determining a ship's position. Other navigation technologies available at the time included radio beacons and early shipborne radar systems. Guided by dedicated mariners like Captain Hiller, the Hui ship RV Chain enabled a generation of oceanographers to learn more about our ocean planet from 1958 all the way till 1975. Another story out of Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. The poles are some of the most dynamic yet fragile regions on Earth, and here we're going to explore the expanding and declining sea ice as seen by satellite. You can find a link to the following story in our show notes. Frozen ocean, Arctic, and Antarctica. The poles are some of the most dynamic yet fragile regions on Earth. Sea ice ebbs and flows with the seasons, reflecting solar radiation and helping cool our climate. Even in the polar night, phytoplankton and microbes thrive under thick layers of ice, fueling a robust ecosystem. Hui research to understand changes at the poles is essential for biodiversity, sea level stability, and Earth's environmental balance.
The poles are some of the most dynamic, yet fragile, regions on Earth. Sea ice ebbs and flows with the seasons, reflecting solar radiation and helping cool our climate. This frozen ocean creates a platform for a robust web of life to grow, mate, hunt, and rest. WHOI scientists are working hard to understand changes at the poles and how these changes impact Earth's environmental balance.
A follow-up story to this from Rebecca Duncan, Sea Ice Algae on Prime Time. It was such a pleasure to do the story on the rapidly melting Arctic sea ice for 9/6 p.m. news. I hope it helps put in perspective that this cannot be an out-of-sight, out-of-mind situation, and that matters for all of us.
Out of sight, out of mind. That's how the impacts of climate change right now devastating the Arctic might feel to the average Australian. But the destabilising effects of melting sea ice are on our doorstep, and it's happening at a much faster rate than predicted.
A northern oasis, forever frozen. But it's the very thing that defines this place the Arctic stands to lose. The waxing and waning of seasonal sea ice, now in crisis.
Areas we used to sample 10 years ago, there isn't ice forming anymore.
17,000 kilometres away on Sydney's northern beaches, Dr. Rebecca Duncan is privy to one of the scientific world's darkest discoveries, that by 2030, the Arctic's summer sea ice may be non-existent.
I do definitely feel like an historian in the sense that I'm documenting what's there and what we stand to lose.
It's one of the coldest places on Earth, yet the Arctic is warming 4 times faster than the rest of the planet. In the summer, the sun doesn't set for 30 days, and it's in this season, when Rebecca travels there for research, the catastrophic effects of climate change come to light.
Watching these frozen icescapes that we rely on to keep our climate in balance and to keep our planet at the temperatures that we're used to actually watch them melt year on year is just visible and dramatic and very confronting.
Sea ice is also essential for the survival of microalgae. Its nutrients, which have been significantly diminishing because of the sea ice loss, is relied upon by krill and fish, which in turn feed whales, seals and polar bears.
That has the potential to really undermine this whole structure that this big marine food web relies on.
It's hard to fathom the rate at which sea ice is melting. In the Arctic, during the winter, the ocean freezes over an area twice as large as Australia. During the summer, over the past few decades, this has melted away by half. But now, the summer ice just covers half of Australia, and in just 5 years' time, it could be gone entirely.
How vast the area then that's gone from white and reflecting heat to blue, black and absorbing heat.
And it's having an exponential warming effect on the entire globe.
Last summer, Australia experienced the worst outbreak of marine heat waves that we've ever seen,
resulting in fish kills, coral bleaching, algae blooms and species moving into waters never seen before.
Marine heat waves show me what the ocean is going to look like every day in about another 30 or 40 years. And so it's a particularly stressful experience for researchers who are studying the ocean because they're seeing these devastating impacts so much earlier than we expected.
An Australian-first tool launched online by the Bureau of Meteorology will now be able to forecast marine heat waves up to 4 months in advance, giving governments, industries and conservationists the ability to plan ahead and act.
If you can see the future, you can do something differently about it.
Madison Scott, 9 News.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Ocean News. Remember to head over to d-2.com, hit on our news tab, and bookmark our news page so you never miss a Ocean News update. Thank you again for watching and take care.
Knowledge of the oceans is more than a matter of curiosity. Our very survival may hinge upon it.